Hello everyone and welcome to my video tutorial on Django for beginners. I am currently teaching a course at undergraduate and the title is Framework Based Web Development with Django. This is the first class, Introduction to Web Design and Setting Up Django. My name is Innocent Okoloku. This course is based on this excellent textbook you can see right here on the screen. So I will advise you to grab a copy for your reference as you proceed along with the tutorials. The learning objectives. At the end of this session, you should be able to describe web technologies, explain the concepts of web design with Django, set up a development environment. The one we are going to use is Visual Studio Code. Create a web page using HTML. Create a basic Django project in Visual Studio Code. Content. Introduction to web technologies. Introduction to web design with Django. Setting up a development environment. Fundamentals of web design. A welcome web page. Starting a Django project in Visual Studio Code. So, let's begin with Introduction to Web Technologies. The World Wide Web is a series of interlinked documents, all of which are accessible via the internet. So it uses something called HTTP to transfer data between clients and servers. We'll see this in more details. HTTP means Hypertext Transfer Protocols. Don't worry too much if you don't understand the technical terms at this stage. As we progress along with the course, everything will become clearer. When we talk about the web, sometimes people confuse it with the internet. Actually, the web is different from the internet. It's not equal to. The internet includes email, voice over internet protocol, and a lot of other things. So let's look at a brief history of the web. It all began in the 1960s to 70s with something called ARPANET that has a relationship with early networking. I'm just bringing some history here because this is also an undergraduate text which is an introduction to web design. It's just to know something about it. In 1989, somebody called Tim Berners proposed something called the World Wide Web, and the first browser, which is called World Wide Web, was created in 1990. If you are interested in the history, you can just take whatever you are seeing in this text, Google it, and you get more information on that. 1993, the Mosaic browser was released, and from 1994 to the present, there have been the rise of modern web technologies, one of which we are going to study in this course. So, web browsers are ubiquitous. When you are doing web design, whatever you are designing is going to run in a browser. So it is good for you to have a browser. Because before somebody came to this video tutorial, you must have gone through a web browser, either Chrome, Mozilla, Edge, or whichever browser you are using, Safari. Also, as somebody that wants to learn how to build websites, web apps, web pages, you should have a browser installed in the system that you want to use to build. It is important for testing, for debugging, and for preview, seeing what you are doing before you put it out. Examples: popular: Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, Opera, so many of them. The role of web browsers is to render HTML. Render means to show hypertext markup language in a format that looks beautiful and responsive on the screen. Then there is also something called rendering CSS, cascading style sheets, which we will also apply in this course. And the web browsers also execute something called JavaScript, which is a programming language that makes the web pages exciting or active. So in the course of learning web technologies, you may have heard of front end versus back end versus full stack. They are advertising for a job and they say front end developer, back end developer, full stack developer. What do these things mean? So when we talk about the front end, we are talking about the client side. The client side of a web technology, which is the front end, consists of the HTML, which is the structure or the web page. It also may consist of a cascading style sheets, which styles the items of the HTML in a beautiful way. And then JavaScript that enables to create interaction or makes the web pages or websites active. Then the back end is the server side. The server side is where items are stored. All the pictures you loaded in your Facebook, in your YouTube, your photos, your videos, a lot of every other document, they are stored in something called the back end, which is a large computer or a series of large computers connected together that are called servers. So for you to be able to build that back end, you use certain kinds of programming languages like PHP, which is personal homepage, Python with some frameworks such as Django, Flask, etc. Or you can use Node.js or Java EE, Java Enterprise Edition. So in this course, we will be learning both front-end development and back-end development using Django, which is we are learning to become full stack developers, front-end and back-end, by using Django. So the back-end handles database logic and authentication. So when we say database, it's a place where a lot of data is stored. Data is your photographs, your videos, your documents that you put somewhere, like in YouTube, in Facebook, in Google Drive, that large storage device. You have a hard disk drive in your computer, you have a storage in your phone, you have a flash drive that you probably carry about. So database is the software structure that is used to organize persistent information in those permanent storage devices, and we'll learn about that in this course. So full stack development combines both front end and back end skills. So for example, in this course we are talking about Django for beginners. So you will see that by the time we start using Django to create our web apps, we would also be using Python, we would also be using HTML to do some things, and we will also be using CSS to do some things. So why is it necessary for people to learn to become full stack developers? It's popular for small teams or solo developers. There are many companies that are not very large, not big enough to hire one person as a front end, another person as a back end. So they normally want somebody that is more versatile. So if you learn something like Django, it's going to give you that versatility that enables you to perform both as a front end developer and also as a back end developer. That doesn't mean that large companies don't need full stack developers. If you have seen the job advertisement of late, sometimes it's very terrible. The kind of skill set that they give to you, you have to know Django, you have to know Java EE, so many things. So for you to make up your mind to learn something like Django is to your own advantage. When we talk about the web, computers are connected over the internet. I can go online and log into a website somewhere and information will come. How come all these web pages in the world, they can operate together seamlessly without having issues? It is because of web standards. There are standards that are developed by some organizations. One of them is called W3C, the other one is WH8TWG, another one is called IETF, and probably a host of others. And the purpose is they want to make the World Wide Web accessible to as many people as possible. They want to make the interactivity of systems within the web to be compatibility. They also want to make the web to be maintainable, and they want the performance to be good. So standards are being created. Let me explain what standards means. Computers are manufactured by different people. There is a Mac computer, there are Windows computers, and some other kind of computers. But if you buy a flash drive from somewhere, you will discover that that flash drive is likely going to fit into any kind of computer you see. There are so many different kinds of mobile phones all over the place. But if you buy the micro SD card, the same micro SD card is likely going to fit into different brands of mobile phones that have a micro SD card slot. Why is it like that? Because of standards. So standards make different machines to be able to operate together seamlessly in such a way that one spare part can fit into different machines. And that is what these organizations are doing for the web. So why do web standards matter? I think I have explained some of the reasons why it matters, but let's look at more. When people write programs for the World Wide Web, the code, the programs that you write should follow some standards across all browsers. Like I made an example of flash drives fitting into almost every computer, the same flash drive, because all the computer manufacturers have agreed that they should have a specific size so that when those who are manufacturing flash drives are manufacturing, they can fit into that size. So we also want every person who is writing a program, whether the person is using Django or Java EE or C++ or PHP or whatever, the code should follow standards that works across all browsers, and also to improve user experience for everyone. I mean, if the system was not standard, a lot of people will be frustrated using the internet. So these web standards are essential for modern web development. Another thing is security. When there are no standards, it becomes easy for somebody to steal somebody's information from the web. So now let's come to when we begin to talk about web. People talk about web app, people talk about web page. What is the difference between them? So a web app is an application that runs in a web browser or is delivered in a web browser. Let's differentiate between them. If we look at an example of Microsoft Word, if you have Microsoft Word running in your system, there is a Microsoft Word version that you have to install on your system to run. That one is a desktop app or a server app. It's not a web app. Then there is another Microsoft Word that runs in Office 365. That one is online. You go online and then you can still do your Microsoft Word. Such kind of apps that run on a browser, they are called web apps. For instance, the Google Suite. You have Google Doc, you have Google Sheet, you have the presentation one that looks like PowerPoint. Now those ones run in Google. You have to be online. Those are web apps. The ones that you install on your desktop are not web apps. So any application that you create, in fact, all the applications that you are going to create with Django will be web apps. So a web app consists of web pages and other resources. For example, files, images, audio, video, document, databases, so on and so forth. So all of them come together to make up a web app. So let's separate a web page. A web page is a window that runs on a web browser to display and receive information from web users. One single web page. An organized collection of web components that run in a web browser can also be called a web page. Web pages are the user interfaces of the web. Those things that you point and click, things that you can see, you can point, you can type in your name, like an online form, for instance. That page that shows you the online form, that page that shows you your Facebook items, the moment you log in, the notifications you have received and all that, that is a web page. They are usually designed and written in HTML, CSS, and sometimes JavaScript is used to make the pages dynamic. A website is a set of related pages located under a single domain name. A website may contain a web application or may just be for information purposes without delivering a specific application. For instance, if someone creates a web page that just shows this is his photo, this is his address, this is his phone number. There are some people that do business like that. This is my business. This is my name. This is my address. This is my number. This is what I do. If you want me to do something for you, call this number. So that is a simple website. Facebook has a website. Facebook website. Even a single page website is also a website. As long as people can go there to do something, it is a website. So let's try to differentiate between a web application and a single web page. Many of us are familiar with online shopping. Normally when you get into an online shop and log in, You see the index page that displays a lot of stuff for you to choose from. So we have a simple category here that shows dairy, meat, bakery, fruit and veg. This is a page on its own. It's an index page. Then maybe you click one of the items here like dairy, and then it takes you to categories of dairies. That is another page. In this page you can do something. Select one product, product 1, product 2, product 3, whatever. Add them to your cart, view your cart, and then when you want to view your cart, it takes you to the cart page where you can perform some other activities like you can clear your cart, you can add an item to your cart, or you can go back and continue shopping, and you can proceed to checkout, and then it takes you again to the checkout page. In the checkout page you can either complete your transaction by entering your personal details, your completing the payment using your credit card, submitting your purchase, and then you get another page which is called the confirmation page before you finally log out. So we see that in this simple web application we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. So that differentiates between web page and web application. So what happens when you type something in a web browser and press enter? So when we say front end, we mean the front end is the same thing as the web client. You sit down with your computer or your phone or your tab, your iPad, and then you press something inside it. You want to see a video, you want to send an email, you want to go shopping. So you type something that says, for example, launch.html. You type it into Google and you press enter. What you have done is you have made a request. I need the HTML file for launch.html. Now this is a very short distance here. This file you may be requiring may be somewhere halfway across the globe. It's going to pass through a lot of servers and gateways which we have omitted for simplicity, and then it's going to go to the big server computer where this launch.html was designed by the back-end developers and kept there. So what does the web server do? The moment it receives this, we'll go to step 3. So the server is just a computer connected to the internet waiting for your request to come. So the server has all these HTML files, pictures, movies, music, everything that is stored there. It is going to now use this launch.html, which is unique in all the world. There are no two launch.html. It's going to use it to search for this document, whether it is in this server. If it finds it in the server, then it will generate something called a response. Say I found it, and then it will now send the HTML representation of whatever has been coded in launch.html back to you. This is called a response. Okay, it will now send it back to the browser. Then your web browser, either Google Chrome or Mozilla or whatever, will now take the response and render it back on your screen. So when you type this launch.html, press enter. Now this thing happens so fast sometimes. If your internet speed is good, you don't realize that it has traveled thousands of kilometers across the globe to bring back information to you. You now see it back on your screen. So we are going to be creating Django programs and then storing them in a server so that people can make requests and then the program can give them responses. So we will deal with request, response. When you start seeing them in the program, don't get confused. Now let's look at some basic web terminologies, because since this course is an introductory course to web design, we can't just jump straight into Django. I mean, if you already know about these things and you just want to go straight into Django, you can omit these ones. But for the purpose of those who don't know about them, let's look at some things. You keep hearing the word URL. It is called Uniform Resource Locator, which must be unique for every domain in all the world. For instance, this is the university where I'm teaching. There should not be any domain name that is exactly like this in all the world. Otherwise there will be confusion. That is one of the things that the standards ensure. Then hypertext transfer protocol. It is a standard for transmitting web resources. So later on we understand how is it that the text is hyper. Why is it not just a plain Microsoft Word document? Then we talk about resources. Resources are data, web pages, images, documents, files, audio, video. Who creates these resources? I bet all of us have created a lot of resources online, is it not? For instance, I have a Facebook page, I have a YouTube channel where this is coming from. So all of us are contributing. I have some documents, also you have some documents. All the pictures we are uploading to Google Photos, Google Maps, and all that. All of them are resources. So request, we mentioned it. A web user requesting something by making inputs into a web app, maybe a Google search. Response, a web server responding to a web user by sending back some resources that the person requested. The client is the computer you are using at that moment to make a request across. Okay, so it is actually the computer and not the person. So server is that large computer somewhere across the web that stores this information. In fact, try to Google how many servers that Facebook has. Can you imagine how is it that Facebook can be able to accommodate so many people uploading pictures and videos in Facebook? Imagine that Google can give a lot of people free email. Where are they storing all those information? If you are on Google, then you have 15 gigs of Google Drive for free. Can you just Google how many people are on Google, and you see how much data centers, how many servers they have? It's enormous. Okay, so we've talked about the front end before, the part of the web that displays the user interface, and then front end development, the process of creating that part of the web that displays the user interface which users interact with. So some people just focus on front end development, and that's what they know. It's okay, it's fine. You know how to make the front page to be beautiful, make it very interactive, make it user friendly, and all that. The back end, some people just specialize in back end, how to create the databases, how to organize the data, how to move the data from the database to the front end and back from the front end to the database. You see the way the thing works. When you log into your Facebook account, you are sending your password, your credentials to the back end. The back end will respond by bringing your page. When you post your pictures, your videos into Facebook, you are sending your data from the front end to the back end. The back end will collect it from you and store the data. So there is a lot of work going on behind and in front. So back end development is the process of developing the processing and database parts of a web app. So we've talked about HTML before. It is a standard programming language for developing web pages, meaning that whether you learn Django, C++, Java EE, one way or another you cannot escape HTML. You must learn how to use HTML. So we are still going to use it to design the face or the user interface of the Django applications that we'll be developing. So JavaScript is a standard language for front-end development. Now what JavaScript does is make the front page to be dynamic, make it to be exciting. So it adds power. It's like you create an HTML page on steroids when you actually write program to make things happen. In fact, you can create a full application using JavaScript. You can create a game using JavaScript. Everything runs on a web browser. So there's a lot you can do with it. You can even create automation projects using JavaScript, embedded systems projects using JavaScript. So where do we get started with web development? The essential tools you need: a code editor. In fact, you can use Microsoft Word to write HTML and it will work, but that's not the best way to do it. So it is better to use a good tool to do the job rather than use a crude tool, even though it works. So there are a lot of choices. Visual Studio Code is a very popular choice today, so that's the one we are going to use. There is also Sublime Text, there is also Atom, and a host of others you can discover on the internet. You also need a browser. For instance, for us to be able to test our HTML file whether it is working, and everything we create in Django, every time we create a Django project and an app, we need to test it. We'll run the server. So if you don't have any web browser installed on your computer, please get one installed, because you can't do anything. You have to test it, or you will be working without testing, and that's not good enough. Optionally, you can have a local server, XAMPP or Node.js, but we don't need a local server. For the fact that we are doing Django development, there is already a server that is built into Django, though is a local server. So, what is Django? Django is a Python based web framework. So before you start learning Django, you must have taken a first course in Python. If you don't know Python programming, don't waste your time learning Django. So what is a web framework? It is a collection of tools that abstract away much of the difficulty and repetition inherent in web development. If you choose to learn only HTML alone, you cannot do both front end and back end development using only HTML and JavaScript. No, you have to still go and learn something like Node.js again before you can do both front end and back end development. But with Django, because you are doing both front end and both back end development, how is that possible? Because it is a web framework. So what it has done is created a collection of tools to make it easy for you to become a full stack developer. So you will see that if you are using HTML and JavaScript, for instance, to create a database, create the connection to the database, write a lot of code to log into the database like we do in Java EE. But when you are using Django, creating a database is as simple as giving a command. As we see, the database is automatically created for you. You don't have to be fidgeting with connection strings or writing a code to do the connection. So many things have been automated for you. It's a framework. So websites generally require similar basic functionality, such as we want to connect to a database because any serious web application has to do with storing data somewhere. We want to set URL routes. Anytime you are interacting the web, looking at the URL on the top, the moment you click something and it takes you to another page, the URL also changes. We want to be able to set them correctly, but that means that when you create different pages, all of them are going to have different URLs. It's not a simple task setting them. What should be shown when this URL shows? We also want to display content in the page. Django makes it easy for you to do that. And we also want to handle security properly. So these basic general functionalities, Django has made them automatic so that you don't have to go into the core details. Rather, you just make some simple commands and all of these things just work for you in Django. So the features of Django are: it is search engine optimized, it is versatile. Django is thoroughly tested, so you don't have to build things from scratch. Just pick building boxes that have been tested and put them together. It is also a Python based framework. Python is a popular language, successful language, and very versatile. You can use it for a lot of things. You use Python from desktop applications to web applications to embedded applications to artificial intelligence, data science, you name it, Python is there. So it's an advantage. It has high scalability, high security, and fosters rapid development. There are other Python based web frameworks which you may want to know about. Django is just one of them. There's Web2Py, CherryPy, Flask, which is also very popular. If you are interested, you can find time to look at them. But for now, let's focus on Django. So Django is not just a wayside language. Many top companies are using Django for their development. Instagram, Firefox, National Geographic, Pinterest, so on and so forth, just to name a few. So the next thing we want to do is set up the development environment, Visual Studio Code. In order for us to be able to develop our Django applications more efficiently, we need to set up Visual Studio Code. So what you should do is just copy this link and go to the website. Once the file is downloaded, double click the file to complete the installation. Just the way you normally install something. It's not a difficult process. Just take note of which operating system you are using. Windows 10, Windows 11 for this. If you are using Linux, if you are using a Mac for this. So let's see our first example. Fundamentals of web design, introduction to HTML. HTML is hypertext markup language. Like we said before, it is the language for creating web pages. What does the HT stand for? Hypertext. So this hypertext means it is text that seems to come alive and it enables you to link to other pages. Markup language, ML, just plain text that is marked up by using something called tags, which instructs the browser to display it in a certain structure. So this is what we have here, is a welcome page. Actually, I am not teaching you HTML in this Django course. You see, I want to assume that you already have some knowledge of HTML and you are taking a course in HTML which you are going to bring into Django. So you should have a knowledge of Python and a knowledge of HTML also before you come and do Django. So I want to believe that you should be able to understand what is written on this side, because our focus for this particular course is on Django. However, usually starts with the document type, which is HTML, and then the HTML opening tag. Between the HTML opening and closing tag, you will have a head opening and closing tag, and then you will have a body opening and closing tag. The steps to create a web page: open Visual Studio Code. From Visual Studio Code, you now say File, New. Save the file as hello csc121 or whichever name you want to save it. Create a folder to store your HTML codes for every class. After saving, go back to Visual Studio Code and just press Shift plus asterisk, and you will see Visual Studio Code will automatically generate a skeleton code, boilerplate code for you, which you can edit. So we can go back and replace it with the code from the other side. So I have Visual Studio Code open. So the first thing I want to do is I'll go to Windows and look for a suitable place to where we can store our HTML files. So if I go to C, for instance, and then I create a folder, new folder, and I will say Django projects 2025. Okay, and then I open it. This is where I'm going to store this file now. If you don't want to close the presentation, you just press the window key if you are using a Windows computer so you can see your taskbar. And now I come here, so I can say File, New Text File. This is the process of creating an HTML page. Now, when you install Visual Studio Code for the first time, it will ask you to make some selections, like which color, background color, whatever. I prefer this dark theme that I have here. If you feel like the text you are seeing in your Visual Studio Code is too small, just hold Ctrl and press plus and it will become bigger. If you feel it is too bigger, just press Ctrl and press minus and it will become smaller. So the first thing I'm going to do, I want to create an HTML file. Okay, I've created the file. I will now save the file as HTML. File, save as. Then I will browse to the new folder which I created in C drive, Django project, and I will say HTML. Okay, I'll call it a name, whatever name you want to call it. Welcome csc121.html. Make this all files, and then you click save. Now if I come to my keyboard and press Shift and asterisk and then I press enter, so you see what happened. Visual Studio Code has automatically created an HTML file for me, and I just press Ctrl S and saved it. I didn't have to do anything. So 8 lines of code have been generated automatically without me writing any code. This is one of the advantages you have when you use an integrated development environment. If you use Microsoft Word or any other text editor, it means you have to do all this typing by yourself. So I can now go back to my presentation, stop the presentation by pressing escape. But if you wish to type everything by yourself, it is up to you. In fact, you may not even need to type anything. So you can just replace, the only thing you need to do is replace some things in the head. So in head, the title was actually something else. They're already giving you a title. And then in this code, that this boilerplate code that was given to you, there is no body. So we are going to go back there now and copy the whole of the body here, everything from here to here, and then we'll put it in there. Ctrl S to save. So if you go back and open the folder, we already have our file here. So this file we just created is showing the icon of Google Chrome. The reason why it is showing the icon of Google Chrome is because I actually set Google Chrome as the default browser of my system. So whichever is the default browser that is set for your system is what is going to be shown here. To run it, we'll just double click it. If you cannot see what is on the screen, you can make it bigger. So we've created our first web page. Now let's come to Django. Starting a Django project in Visual Studio Code. So we have already created this Django project 2025 folder somewhere, and we are going to use it. We are going to first of all start with Visual Studio Code, then we will enter the projects folder, and then we'll create a folder for a specific project. For example, we can call it Hello Site 1. To do this, we'll open Visual Studio Code and select the folder. So two ways to do that. You can create a folder here and call it Hello Site 1. Press enter. Then we'll go to Visual Studio Code. We'll close this now. Open folder, Hello Site 1, select the folder. When it asks you whether you trust the authors, say yes, I trust the authors. We can close this welcome page. Now we want to see a terminal. It depends on how large you made your screen to be. For instance, I made my fonts to be very large, so some things disappeared. If I made my fonts to be smaller, then you can actually see the menu and you can open a terminal from here. But if I made my fonts to be very large, then you may not see the menu, and then if you want to open the terminal, view terminal. So the terminal shows here. So this terminal is like your, if you have ever used the command prompt in Windows. If you go to Windows here now, I'm in Windows 11, and you say CMD, it will show you the command prompt, DOS prompt. It is in Linux, it is in Windows, it is in Mac. So this command prompt has been placed inside Visual Studio Code as PowerShell. So most of the things you can do with the command prompt, you can also do it with the terminal here. Now let's go back to our presentation. So we selected the Hello Site 1 folder and we are inside it. Then we open the terminal. This is the process by which I open the terminal. It's showing here. What we are going to do now is to set up a virtual environment. Make sure you have internet connectivity when you are doing this. Now, if the Python that was installed on your system is less than 3.10, then you need to do pipe install virtual env. But if your Python is greater than 3.10, you don't need to do that. My Python is greater than that, so I'm going to overlook that. Once you have installed the virtual environment, we are going to create a virtual environment. Now let's create a virtual environment. Python. If everything is scrambling on your screen when you are typing, just press CLS and press enter, and everything will come back to normal. Python minus m venv, then venv The virtual environment has been created. In fact, to be sure that the virtual environment is created, has been created, see I arrow and see what they have there. And you will see the dot hello venv. So the next thing you want to do is activate it. So you say dot hello venv slash script slash activate. Make sure you are not typing anything wrong. V. Okay. To show that it has been activated, you will see that the virtual environment is shown here in green. If you don't understand what virtual environment means, don't worry about it. As the course goes on, we'll understand what it means. Let's go back to the note. So we just activated the virtual environment. If you are using Linux, this is the way to activate it. In case you find an error, some first time students usually have an error. The way to go about it is very simple. Just open PowerShell. If you are in Windows, open PowerShell as admin. Copy this command and put there. Set execution policy remote signed. Then it will ask you yes or no. Just say yes and press enter. And then you can go back and try to activate the virtual environment again. The next step is we are going to install Django in the virtual environment. So we say pipe 3 install Django. For all of this, you need to be connected to the internet. Very good. So Django has been installed successfully into this particular virtual environment. So why do we need to use a virtual environment before doing all this? Sometimes when you create different Django projects, they may require different things to be installed, different tools to be installed. So if you don't want the tools that are installed for one Django project to affect the tools that are installed in another Django project, you create a specific environment for the particular Django project you are going to create, so that whatever tools you are downloading will be specifically for that particular Django project. So throughout our studies of Django, every time you create a new Django project, you must create a virtual, first of all you must create a folder for that project. Then you must create a virtual environment for that particular project its own. And then whatever installation you are installing must be for that particular Django project, so that it doesn't interfere with what is happening in other Django projects. That is why we use virtual environments. So let's continue with the class. So Django has been installed successfully. Next thing we are going to do is to create a Django project. The command is Django admin start project hello project, whatever project name you want to call it. But remember, when you give it a project name, put a dot in front of it for a purpose. So let's do that. So let's clear the clutter from here, and I say Django. I use this project just to indicate that this is a project, then press enter. So the project has been created. Now if you come to this side of the Visual Studio Code, you will discover that everything we create shows on this side. First of all, we created a virtual environment. It shows in the folder. Let me expand this part so you can see. So this is hello site 1 folder, and everything that has been created inside it. Virtual environment, now our project. If you click on this, you will discover that this project automatically generated some files for us. Later we'll see what these files mean. Now what we are going to do is try to test what we have been doing so far is good enough. So we are going to say python manage.py run server. Django already has its own built-in server for testing. And after we run the server, we will now go to this URL to open the test page. Python manage. Make sure you are typing correctly. So if the server has run successfully, this is what you see here. Before we open the server, let us look at on this side. Did you observe that in the process of running server, some new things have also been created on this side? dbl.sqlite3 is a database. That is a place where somebody can store pictures, videos, photographs, document has automatically been created for you. The connection has been set without you doing anything. So you can either copy this URL and post it on a web page, or you can just click on it and follow the link. It will open your default web browser. So what it tells you, the install worked successfully, congratulations. It tells you the Django version 5.2. There is documentation here if you want to read it. There is a tutorial that teaches you how to do a polling app, and there is a Django community where you can connect, get help, ask questions, contribute. So let's continue from there. So if we take this URL for example and put it inside Edge, it will still show you the same page. So it doesn't matter which web browser you put it. So to quit the server, you just press Ctrl plus C or Fn plus B or whatever other method you discover online, but I am used to pressing Ctrl plus C. Then you can quit the server. And if you want to stop using the virtual environment, you just type deactivate. It's Ctrl and C. It takes me back. But notice that we are still in the virtual environment here. So if you want to leave the virtual environment, you just say deactivate. Press enter. See, this green text has disappeared and we are no longer in the virtual environment. So here is the summary of the steps in starting a Django project in Visual Studio Code. Number one, create a project directory, wherever you want to put whatever name you want to call it. Secondly, enter the directory. You can either enter the directory via the method that I have shown you or through the terminal, which we will learn in the next class and beyond. Create a virtual environment. This is the command. Activate the virtual environment. Install Django. Create a project. If the project requires a database, you will now run python manage.py migrate. We didn't do that, but we will do that in the future classes. Then you can test it by running Django's internal web server by doing python manage.py run server. Then you can click or type in the URL in the browser to show the web page. You can also stop the server by doing Ctrl plus C or Ctrl plus break, whichever. And you can also deactivate by typing deactivate the virtual environment. So something else that we are going to use in this class is GIT. How to make sure that we are controlling the versions that we are producing and to push it in the GitHub website, GitHub repository. Keep it there for our future use, or if we decide to distribute it. So for that purpose, you may want to install GIT in your system. Of course, this is not compulsory for learning Django. Actually, it is not a part of the Django course, so it is only for those who are interested. You can just go to the Git website and download for your system. Download a copy, follow the instructions. In most cases, the instruction is you just answer yes, yes, yes until you get it installed on your system. So after you have finished installing GIT successfully, you can check it in your terminal to know which version that you have there. And then you should also do a one-time system configuration by declaring the name and the email address that you want to be associated with all your GIT commits. So we'll also set something called the default branch name to main. So these are the commands we are going to use. For instance, we say git config global user dot name. You put your name there. In my own case, this is the name I chose. Then we also say git config global user dot email. You put your email there. In my own case, this is the email that I use. So I am registered to GitHub, so I can log in, and this is the email that I use to register. So if you are interested in this part of the course, I would suggest that you should also register to GitHub. Like in the next two classes, we are actually going to push some of our codes for a website that we develop into the GitHub repository. I have some codes there. Anytime I need the code, or my computer crashed, or something went wrong, or I lost my programs, It is easy for me to go there. It's also like Google Drive. You put your information there and it is secured. So that's what we do with one of the things that we do with Git and GitHub. The third command we are going to do is git config global init.default branch main TLS. So we have successfully installed Git in the system. First of all, to be sure that you have successfully installed Git, you want to know what version of Git was installed. So if I type git version, what do I get? I have Git version 2.47.0 Windows.2. Now, if you got an error or it tells you explicitly that Git has not been installed, then you should go and make sure it is installed. And after it is installed, you should be able to see it here. That is done. And put it here. And put it here. And that is done. So, we have come to the end of this session. The recommended textbook is Django for Beginners 5th edition by William S. Vincent. Very good book. And this is the Amazon link where you can grab a copy for your reference. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more videos. Thank you and see you in the next class.